In the world of deep-sea engineering, you do not negotiate with physics. At 1,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, water is no longer a liquid. It is a monolithic, crushing force of nature that wants to absolutely pulverize you. To build a machine that can carry human beings into that abyss, you have to be a master of absolute perfection. A single microfracture in an acrylic viewport, a faulty ballast valve, or a 1% drop in oxygen scrubbing efficiency, and your multi-million-dollar vessel instantly becomes a mass grave. I have spent my entire life designing systems to keep fragile human beings alive in the most hostile environment on Earth. I just never realized that while I was obsessively calculating atmospheric pressure in my dry dock, the atmospheric pressure inside my own marriage was quietly reaching a catastrophic, lethal threshold. My name is Kale. I'm 38 years old, and I am a lead subsea systems architect and hydrodynamic engineer. 6 years ago, I married Marina. Marina was the director of VIP experiences for a global mega yacht charter syndicate. She lived for the sun-drenched, champagne-soaked aesthetic of Monaco, St. Bart's in the Bahamas. She loved the billionaires, the cocktail parties, and the red carpets. I was the introverted engineer who spent 14 hours a day inside windowless metal tubes smelling like hydraulic fluid and ozone. We were opposites, but I thought we were the perfect crew. She brought the elite clients, and I built the vessels that gave them the ocean. For 5 grueling years, I poured every ounce of my personal savings, my sanity, and my genius into my absolute magnum opus. I called it the Nereid. It wasn't just a submarine, it was a revolutionary 5-person luxury subsea explorer. I had engineered a proprietary buoyancy algorithm and an optically flawless 6-inch thick acrylic viewing sphere that gave the passengers a 360-degree distortion-free view of the ocean floor. It was a technological holy grail that mega yacht owners were spending tens of millions of dollars trying to acquire. Independent maritime auditors appraised the hardware and the software patents at roughly $30 million. I promised Marina this vessel was our golden ticket. I told her that when we licensed the technology, we would launch our own deep-sea tourism empire. We would be set for life. But Marina didn't want to build an empire from the dry dock. She looked at my grease-stained hands and my exhausted eyes, and she decided she wanted the $30 million, but she wanted to share the captain's chair with someone who owned his own super yacht. The hull of our marriage started to buckle when Marina's charter agency was acquired by a massive, aggressive yachting conglomerate. The CEO of that syndicate was a man named Julian. Julian was 45 years old and the absolute poster boy for maritime arrogance. He had never built a boat, and he didn't know how to tie a bowline knot. He was a ruthless venture capitalist who bought 300-foot mega yachts, staffed them with underpaid crews, and charged tech billionaires exorbitant fees to party on them. He wore custom linen suits, flew a private seaplane, and treated brilliant marine engineers like disposable dock workers. In my industry, guys like Julian are considered absolute parasites. Suddenly, Marina was spending all her time at Julian's glass tower headquarters in Miami, claiming she was restructuring his global launch strategy for a new maritime venture. The red flags didn't just quietly appear. They sounded like a breach alarm on a nuclear sub. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect. Marina started actively belittling my life's work. "Kale, you need to wake up," she scoffed one evening, tossing her $5,000 handbag onto my pristine drafting table. "Julian manages a billion-dollar fleet. He dictates the culture of the Riviera. You're just a guy sitting in a garage playing with a giant fishbowl. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about your life support math. They care about the leather seats inside." Second, the intense, unnatural secrecy regarding her devices. Marina changed the passcode on her phone and her iPad. She started taking crisis logistics calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in my dry dock's transport logistics. Marina, a woman who absolutely loathed the smell of my testing facility, suddenly asked me exactly how the Nereid was mounted to its heavy transport trailer and if the proprietary operational software was stored on an encrypted flash drive. When a VIP concierge suddenly asks for the master encryption keys to a $30 million subsea exploration vessel, you don't answer the question. You lock down the bulkheads and check for a leak.
When you build proprietary AI technology that controls the physical safety of human beings underwater, you don't rely on a standard Wi-Fi password. My entire dry dock network was routed through a custom hardware firewall that silently logged every single byte of unauthorized data moving across the local area network. One Saturday night, when Marina was supposedly at a weekend VIP retreat in the Hamptons, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert from the facility. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my secure development server to an unauthorized external cloud locker. I didn't storm out of my house and speed to the dock. I simply isolated the connection, artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl to buy myself time, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my home monitors. She had her encrypted messaging app open, communicating directly with Julian. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated, multi-million-dollar maritime heist. Julian wrote, "My chief engineers just reviewed the compressed simulation code you sneaked out last week. They are completely losing their minds. The ballast stabilization logic is 10 years ahead of anything Triton or OceanGate has. If we load this sub onto my mega yacht into a live maiden dive in the Bahamas with our top investors, they will hand me $100 million for the new tourism company. Have you secured the master source code in the transport trailer yet?" Marina replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm copying the master repository from his server right now. The idiot actually thinks I care about his stupid metal tube. Tomorrow, when he goes to his marine symposium in Seattle, I'll hire a heavy transport crew to load the sub. We'll tell him there was a lithium battery fire in the warehouse that completely destroyed the hull. He'll be completely devastated, but he won't be able to prove a thing. We launch in the Bahamas, I'll serve him with divorce papers, and we'll be set for life. He's just a sad, grease-stained mechanic, Julian. We're going to own the ocean." Julian responded, "You're a visionary, my love. The mechanic is going to fund our entire empire." I sat alone in the dark, staring at the glowing monitor, as my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. My wife of 6 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal 5 years of my blood, sweat, and genius, intentionally fake a catastrophic fire, hijack my masterpiece, launch it on the biggest stage in the world, and leave me utterly destroyed. They thought I was just a sad, naive mechanic. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated hydrodynamic destruction a master marine architect is capable of coding. When you build proprietary AI technology that controls the physical safety of human beings underwater, you don't rely on a standard Wi-Fi password. My entire dry dock network was routed through a custom hardware firewall that silently logged every single byte of unauthorized data moving across the local area network. One Saturday night, when Marina was supposedly at a weekend VIP retreat in the Hamptons, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert from the facility. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my secure development server to an unauthorized external cloud locker. I didn't storm out of my house and speed to the dock. I simply isolated the connection, artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl to buy myself time, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my home monitors. She had her encrypted messaging app open, communicating directly with Julian. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated, multi-million-dollar maritime heist. Julian wrote, "My chief engineers just reviewed the compressed simulation code you sneaked out last week. They are completely losing their minds. The ballast stabilization logic is 10 years ahead of anything Triton or OceanGate has. If we load this sub onto my mega yacht into a live maiden dive in the Bahamas with our top investors, they will hand me $100 million for the new tourism company. Have you secured the master source code in the transport trailer yet?" Marina replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm copying the master repository from his server right now. The idiot actually thinks I care about his stupid metal tube. Tomorrow, when he goes to his marine symposium in Seattle, I'll hire a heavy transport crew to load the sub. We'll tell him there was a lithium battery fire in the warehouse that completely destroyed the hull. He'll be completely devastated, but he won't be able to prove a thing. We launch in the Bahamas, I'll serve him with divorce papers, and we'll be set for life. He's just a sad, grease-stained mechanic, Julian. We're going to own the ocean." Julian responded, "You're a visionary, my love. The mechanic is going to fund our entire empire." I sat alone in the dark, staring at the glowing monitor, as my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. My wife of 6 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal 5 years of my blood, sweat, and genius, intentionally fake a catastrophic fire, hijack my masterpiece, launch it on the biggest stage in the world,
and leave me utterly destroyed. They thought I was just a sad, naive mechanic. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated hydrodynamic destruction a master marine architect is capable of coding. If you want to destroy a fraudulent yacht owner, you don't sink his boat. You let him steal your submarine, you let him invite the wealthiest billionaires on Earth inside the pristine cabin, and then you quietly humiliate him in front of the entire world. I didn't confront her. If I yelled and locked the server, Julian's army of corporate lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim they had a verbal contract to the design, and tie me up in court for a decade until I went bankrupt. I needed them to steal the submarine. I needed Julian to proudly lock himself inside my creation and stream his genius to the world. And as a master engineer, I would never intentionally drown anyone. I am not a murderer, so I went to work on the emergency systems. To Julian's highly paid, arrogant software engineers, the cloned code I left on the server would look absolutely flawless. When they ran digital simulations of the sub in deep water, it would perform beautifully. But deeply embedded in the absolute foundational math of the emergency ascent protocol, buried so deep in the hex code that no QA tester on Earth would ever find it, I wrote a logic bomb. I called it the benthic anomaly. Submarines are equipped with an emergency sea marker dye system. If the sub is lost on the surface, it releases a massive, expanding cloud of highly concentrated, indelible neon pink fluorescent dye into the ocean so the Coast Guard can spot it from the air. I mechanically reversed the valve on the dye canister. Instead of pumping the dye out into the ocean, I routed it directly inward into the high-pressure air conditioning vents of the pristine white leather passenger cabin. Then I programmed the logic bomb. I set it to trigger exactly when the sub reached a depth of 100 feet, a perfectly safe depth, but fully submerged. When the depth gauge hit 100 feet, the payload would execute. The system would instantly lock out Julian's manual controls. It would forcefully blow the main ballast tanks, causing the submarine to shoot to the surface like a cork, completely safe but terrifying. But milliseconds before it surfaced, the AC vents would violently detonate the emergency sea marker dye, blasting the entire interior and everyone inside it with a localized hurricane of permanent, sticky, neon pink fluorescent foam. And finally, the sub's external hailing speakers would hijack their own radio frequency, broadcasting the audio file of Marina and Julian's WhatsApp conversation on a continuous loop to every boat within a 5-mile radius. I finalized the patch. I packed my bags for the convention in Seattle. I kissed Marina goodbye. "Have a great trip, Kale," she smiled, handing me my coffee. "Take care of the dock, Marina," I replied, looking her dead in the eyes. "You know that project is my masterpiece." "I'll guard it with my life," she promised. I drove away. I let them bring the thieves into my sanctuary. I let them steal the bomb. Now, they just had to dive.
I didn't go to Seattle. I flew straight to the offices of the most aggressive, ruthless maritime law and intellectual property litigator in the industry. I sat down at his mahogany conference table. I handed him my original, time-stamped code logs, the high-definition security footage, and the crystal-clear iCloud transcripts of Marina and Julian explicitly conspiring to steal the vessel and fake a warehouse fire. And finally, I handed him the official, federally approved patent documentation for the Nereid, which I had secretly expedited and secured exclusively in my own name a month prior. My wife and her accomplice are going to illegally transport a stolen, uncertified experimental submersible to the Bahamas and launch it from a mega yacht with billionaires inside this Saturday, I told my lawyer calmly. My lawyer reviewed the documents, read the chat logs, and slowly smiled, like a shark smelling blood in the water. Kale, utilizing stolen, patented maritime safety software to solicit hundreds of millions of dollars from international investors is massive willful federal fraud. But beyond that, launching an uncertified submarine with civilian passengers violates international maritime laws and Coast Guard regulations. If he puts that sub in the water, we won't just sue him. The authorities will literally liquidate his entire corporate empire. "Draft the paperwork," I said, "and call the Coast Guard. But do not stop the dive. Let him lock the hatch. I want him to put his face on it in front of the whole world." On Wednesday afternoon, my phone notified me that my dry dock had been breached. Through the hidden cameras, I watched Marina happily direct the loading of my submarine onto an unmarked flatbed truck. She left a white envelope containing divorce papers on my desk and intentionally set off a massive smoke bomb in the corner of the warehouse to fake a fire, walking out without looking back. They were laughing. They thought they had just executed the perfect, untouchable heist, but they had no idea they had just climbed into a pink torpedo.
Saturday afternoon, live from the Bahamas, the undisputed playground of global wealth. I sat in my dark hotel room, watching the global maritime broadcast in high definition. The live stream, hosted on Julian's corporate site, had over 1 million viewers. Julian was sitting in the pilot seat of the Nereid, looking incredibly smug in a white polo shirt. 3 extremely wealthy tech billionaires were sitting in the pristine white leather passenger seats, looking out the massive acrylic bubble at the crystal clear water. Marina was standing on the deck of the mega yacht, holding a glass of champagne, looking incredibly proud, believing she had just secured a billion-dollar empire. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian announced into his headset, his voice oozing with arrogance, broadcasting to the yacht and the internet. "Welcome to the future of ocean exploration. We are beginning our descent." The sub slipped beneath the waves. The camera showed the beautiful blue water enveloping the acrylic sphere. I looked at the telemetry feed on my laptop. I knew the math. 50 feet, 70 feet, 90 feet. At exactly 100 feet, the depth sensor hit the trigger. My logic bomb executed. Inside the sub, the digital control panels instantly flashed a bright, unavoidable red. Julian frowned, tapping the screen. "Hold on, we have a slight," Julian started to say. He didn't finish the sentence. With a massive mechanical clang, the emergency ballast tanks violently blew. The sub immediately halted its descent and shot upward toward the surface at an incredible roller coaster speed. The billionaires gasped, gripping their armrests in terror. "What are you doing?" one of them yelled. But the ascent was just the appetizer. Milliseconds later, the reversed emergency valve blew. A deafening hiss echoed through the cabin. The high-pressure AC vents violently erupted. A localized, blinding hurricane of highly concentrated, indelible, neon-pink fluorescent sea marker dye blasted directly into the sealed cabin. It was absolute, instantaneous chaos. The pristine white leather seats, the expensive electronics, and the immaculate billionaire passengers were instantly, completely obliterated by thick, sticky, neon-pink foam. Julian took a direct hit to the face. His hair, his teeth, and his expensive white polo shirt were dyed a glowing, radioactive pink. The billionaires were shrieking in sheer, unadulterated horror, coughing and wiping neon-pink slime out of their eyes, completely blinded. "What the hell is this?" a billionaire roared, frantically trying to wipe the dye off his face, only smearing it deeper into his skin. Julian was totally unhinged, screaming in high-pitched panic, blindly mashing the locked control panel with pink, slippery hands. "It's a malfunction! I can't see!" The sub violently breached the surface of the ocean, popping out of the water like a giant pink cork, bobbing erratically in the waves right next to the mega yacht. And then the external hailing speakers kicked in at 120 decibels. Instead of a distress signal, the massive speakers blasted the raw audio file of Julian and Marina's conversation across the entire bay. Marina's voice boomed like thunder. "We'll tell him there was a lithium battery fire. He's just a sad, grease-stained mechanic, Julian." Julian's voice echoed back, completely undeniable. "You're a visionary, my love. The mechanic is going to fund our entire empire." On the deck of the mega yacht, Marina dropped her champagne glass. It shattered. She put her hands over her mouth, her face turning the color of wet concrete, staring at the bobbing pink submarine in pure horror. The elite investors on the yacht stared at her in absolute disgust. The livestream chat completely broke. 1 million people had just watched a CEO turn himself and his top investors into screaming neon-pink clowns on live television. Before Marina could even attempt to run, 3 heavily armed U.S. Coast Guard interceptor boats, accompanied by Bahamian maritime police, surrounded the mega yacht, sirens blazing. I took a slow, deeply satisfying sip of my coffee, smiled at the chaotic, pink-stained livestream, and texted my lawyer. Surface.
You cannot unblast a submarine full of billionaires with neon pink dye on a global broadcast. The fallout was an absolute, unmitigated, scorched earth massacre. The video of the pink submarine and the audio confession went viral globally within 10 minutes. By Sunday morning, Julian was the biggest laughingstock in the history of the maritime industry. The wealthy investors who had been trapped in the sub immediately pulled their money and filed massive lawsuits against him for gross negligence, fraud, and emotional distress. But the real fatal blow came from the authorities.
Because Julian had illegally operated an uncertified, stolen submersible vessel with civilian passengers, the Coast Guard and Interpol boarded his mega yacht. He was arrested on the spot for massive international maritime endangerment and corporate fraud. His entire billionaire fleet was impounded, his company collapsed, and he was facing 10 years in federal prison. Marina's life was vaporized. Julian, realizing he was facing total ruin, immediately blamed her. He told investigators that she was a rogue concierge who had supplied him with the stolen malicious submarine without his knowledge. He threw her overboard to save himself. She called me from a hotel room in the Bahamas, sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating. Kale, please, the Coast Guard is here. Julian dumped me. The sub exploded with pink dye. You have to tell them you made a mistake with the emergency system. Please, I have nothing. I didn't make a mistake, Marina, I said calmly, leaning back in my drafting chair. I gave you exactly what you stole. You just forgot to check the ballast routing. I read your chat logs, by the way. Check your email. You've been served with a federal IP lawsuit. Enjoy the pink. I hung up and blocked her number. During our divorce settlement, she had absolutely zero leverage. Because she was facing criminal charges for corporate espionage and faking a fire against me, the judge awarded me 100% of the marital assets and denied her any alimony. She walked away with millions in legal debt and a felony record.
It's been almost 3 years since that catastrophic dive in the Bahamas. After the dust finally settled and the lawsuits were paid out, the Coast Guard returned my submarine. I flushed the pink dye out, reset the valves, and sold the real, fully functioning, flawless patents to a legendary, highly respected global oceanic research institute. I didn't sell it to a flashy venture capitalist. I sold it to scientists who actually understand hydrodynamics, respect the pressure, and treat their engineers like true partners. I made enough money from that single contract to buy my own independent marine design firm, and my business has never been better. Last I heard, Marina avoided a long prison sentence by taking a plea deal, but she is completely blacklisted from the luxury yachting and PR industries globally. She is currently working at a cheap tourist kiosk, handing out flyers for budget snorkeling tours, knowing every single day that she voluntarily threw away her golden ticket to the absolute top of the industry. Julian, completely bankrupt and ruined, is currently serving a 6-year sentence for maritime fraud. He has no mega yachts, no bespoke suits, and he is permanently stained by his own greed. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's a simple one. Never try to hijack a vessel if you don't know the architect who wrote the life support code. If your partner thinks they can steal your hard work, push you into the shadows, and take the captain's chair for themselves, don't try to pull the plug, don't fight them for the hatch. Smile, hand them the keys, let them build their massive hype, and let them confidently dive into the spotlight. And right when they think they've conquered the abyss, just blow the ballast and let the pressure reveal their true colors. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what's the most embarrassing technological failure you've ever witnessed? Stay sharp, trust the math, and always check your emergency valves.